Good morning and welcome to the 23rd annual exhibit of hydrogen fuel cell technologies. We've been here for quite some time talking about the developments. We always need to have specialists on stage who know what's going on in the domestic market and in the foreign market, and what is the potential of the German industries in delivering fuel cell technologies in the domestic market and for export. We have two guests up next on the stage who are well informed about this field. In fact, it's their profession to be well informed. I'll be talking to Dr. Manfred Stefener, who's chairman of VDMA, Working Group Fuel Cells. That's the German Engineering Federation. And I'll be talking to Franz Lehner, who's managing consultant at 4E Tech, also an organization that produces publications on the fuel cell market. And we'll be discussing the fuel cell industry guide to 2018. Please welcome with me Dr. Manfred Stefener and Franz Lehner. So, join me. So, morning, Manfred. Morning. So, before we get to this wonderful brochure here, I think the first question is, what does the VDMA do? How do we translate it? And what do you do there?
Yes, the VDMA, I think you used already like the right translation, the German Engineering Association. It's a strong industry association with 3,200 members. It represents the German machinery industry, so which is one of the strongest German industry sectors. And so we are representing here, and I'm representing like the working group fuel cells, so with about 50 members. Yeah, so most of them like already like in the VDMA for a long time, and so we have brought forward a lot of joint joint innovations on the technical side, but also have discussed with the politics around, so for basically the boundary conditions for the different industry sectors, and so the gathering in the German industry or engineering association makes that very powerful for everybody in that group.
So do you pool skills and knowledge? Do you make sure the companies are communicating with each other? Do you also address politicians? And do politicians come to you with questions?
Yes, of course, it's a bi-directional activity, of course. So, of course, the very important activity that we bring companies together, making the innovation. And I think it can be seen that the German fuel cell industry, the German fuel cell suppliers are strongly positioned in the market. Yeah, so Franz Lehner will talk about like the market. It cannot be 100% seen in every number, but I think, so when I talk to like the people here on the fair, to the suppliers, so they report strong sales and a strong positioning in the world market.
We should address this brochure here. There's copies on the tables. And you can also download this brochure. It's pretty easy to scan the code on the other side and get a copy for your computer. This is the 2018 version of the Fuel Cell Industry Guide that you've produced. Could you tell us about the brochure, what's in it, and who's it for?
Yeah, so the brochure is brand new, representing and showing like the strength and the working fields of the members of the working group and the VDMA, it's of course there to show the strength, to get in touch with market players, to bring like the knowledge forward. So here in this brochure you can see basically all the knowledge with examples of the different companies. Mm-hmm. And I think it is important to bring people together to strengthen innovation and also talk about like the important boundary conditions. Also that is like an important content, so that we want to clearly mention that the industry suppliers are strongly positioned, but that we need in Germany consistent and strong boundary conditions in the market, so that we, for example, continue with the German innovation program, with a clear statement over time that also like the different ministries, because the shaping of ministries has changed again, so that they keep up with their responsibilities and do not only focus on certain sectors, but on the broad industry. That is very important, so that we bring forward also like the stationary funding program, so with very consistent boundary conditions. So this is a very important statement as well. I think in the politics with the new government, we see like a lot of chances, a lot of potential. Like the agreement between the parties has like a lot of positive answers. So it's very clear that we need quick implementation, very swift movements in order to position the German industry well in the world market.
And with that, we can pass it on to you, Franz, and address the questions of exactly the international market as compared with the German market. First of all, what's the international market like for German manufacturers of fuel cells?
Yeah, so like you can see on some of the slides that are here shown and also in the brochure, we've contributed a global picture of the industry to this brochure, and Europe is a rather small market on the global scale for fuel cells at the moment. So there's a lot of stuff going on in Asia, in North America, but we have a large number of active supply chain companies, fuel cell integrators in Europe that are very well positioned to take a bigger piece of the cake in the future. But right now, you could characterize Europe more as a site for a lot of demonstration projects in different applications. For example, in trains most recently, I would say Germany is very much leading that field, and other regions in the world are now following. But yeah, overall, we have seen a lot of growth in the last 2 to 3 years in the fuel cell industry, but that was mainly driven by a few OEMs that pushed the topic, like Toyota, Hyundai, Honda. Each of their cars has around 100 kilowatts of fuel cells. So if you do 100 cars, you change the statistics that we collect every year from the fuel cell companies directly quite dramatically. So that is what you have seen in the last years, a strong growth because of a few companies that introduce fuel cell cars to the market. But on a global scale, comparing to other industries, obviously the fuel cell industry is still in a very nascent state, and now that is the right time for German suppliers, for German companies to get involved. And what we are seeing, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, is that traditional tier 1 suppliers in the automotive industry also approach us to see what can be their role in the development of fuel cells. And so very serious players are getting involved right now, and Germany is very well placed to play an important role going forward, even though currently we don't have one of the 10 biggest fuel cell companies based in Germany on a global scale. But that hopefully will change soon.
As I look around the fair, though, you've always had the R&D, the development. It's been cutting edge. The science is cutting edge here in Germany. So right now this is manufacturing not really a product for the domestic market. It's an export commodity.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, that's generally a typical German thing. We like to export stuff. But we shouldn't forget that we need a market in our own country to demonstrate the technology so that it will be an export in the future as well. I mean, I'm not a fan of introducing a speed limit in Germany, but it's often said that because we don't have a speed limit, Porsches are sold very well abroad, even though they don't have any use abroad. But with fuel cells, I think we need some domestic deployment, and to show the world that we are very well positioned in that future technology.
Yeah, so I maybe want to add to that. I think we see in our cities, for example, with the pollution topic, so with like the goals of the government to bring CO2 emissions down until 2050. So there would be many possibilities to really make the regulations that also like the strong technology can be or will be also used in Germany?
Yes, I think we are at a stage where we understand the technology. There are companies that put vehicles on the road that are in everyday use. So it's not so much anymore about research and development. I think we need to really clearly communicate to the decision makers at the policy level. The technology is ready. We need the right framework conditions, as you said, to really roll it out. Similar to what has happened in the PV industry, if someone takes some bold decisions and puts a big funding, not big funding, but big rollout scheme there to decrease the difference to competitiveness, the technology can get cost competitively much quicker than anybody would have thought in PV, and the same could happen for fuel cells.
Exactly, and so in that part, the German industry, so you have just to go around this fair, what German industry can do and what manufacturing expertise is there. And many of the members of the VDMA so have been like active in fuel cell technology and manufacturing technology like for 10, 20 years already. Yeah? So, and like it's out of R&D, we just need to use it.
I mean, you've been in this industry longer than I have. I mean, 7 years in there, but it's only going up in the last 7 years. You went through a valley of tears, maybe 15 years ago, but air quality is really a major disruptor to the automotive industry. It has a much bigger impact than CO2 discussion and efficiency discussions because it changes the buying behavior of the customer if you can't drive your car anymore downtown. And if commercial companies can't go with their delivery vehicles downtown. So I think there's a lot of disruption going on right now in automotive, and it will help fuel cells.
Yeah, so and in addition to automotive, so we have like the stationary field where we have like a strong program in place where we have like the industry prepared, so sales numbers are going up, so that is like another field in the building sector bringing CO2 emissions down. So here, so we could also have so stronger and clearer a path, to show what is really wanted. So what is also important to combine these sectors, sector coupling, so that we have like in all these fields the usage of the components that we're producing here and like also the end products.
We should break this down to a number of separate issues here because they're so colorful. One of them was, yes, you've done the R&D and the demonstration products. I have fuel cell manufacturers up on the stage here. They were here 10 years ago. Now, if I refer to R&D or demonstration products, they'll chase me from the stage. They say, verdammt nochmal, it is a commercial product. Okay, it is a viable commercial product, but it is more driven in, let's talk about the Asian market. Okay, so what are the differences in that market there? There are things driving the commercial success of the fuel cell industry that are not present right now in Germany, but it is present in Asia.
I guess there are two different things. One is Japan, which took a very bold decision to go for a national hydrogen strategy very early on, and with OEMs like Toyota who then can put that in reality. So that is a very much a political decision there, a longer-term strategic decision of the government. And in China, it's what we have seen in the last 2 to 3 years, that China emerged as a major market for fuel cells, has really to do with air quality mainly. So that the Chinese understood it will not only be battery electric vehicles, but both technologies are complementary. And that's amazing what happened overnight, essentially. And we get all these questions from German supply chain companies, how they can get involved in the Chinese growth. And a lot of partnerships are currently being agreed. So if China does something, they do it seriously. And that is maybe what happened with PV in Germany 15 years ago is what's currently happening with fuel cells in China, that they are putting the money in to really scale the technology up.
So one of the driving forces there is clear. Just to show how complicated, you mentioned sector coupling. It is not feasible that Germany will suddenly shift away from natural gas. But that natural gas raises two issues. One is, of course, energy dependency. Germany is entirely dependent on imports. There is not much natural gas in this country, and I don't think it's being sourced anymore. The other is how you use it. And the reason I raise this question is because even if we use fuel cell technologies in combination with natural gas, the fuel cell effectivity in using natural gas is 30% better than simply burning it. So there's a market, and it's using a source of energy we use now, which is affordable as we wait for the affordable green hydrogen to come onto the market. So stage one, using natural gas with fuel cell technologies. Where are we there? We need a little bit more pressure, obviously, to get the stationary applications in people's houses. Where are we there?
Yeah, so the products are on the markets. There are several players that offer products. We have like the KfW 433 program in place, so which strongly supports. So with in total like 8-year program, like this market introduction of fuel cells in that sector, and that's correct, yeah. So like the CO2 savings in the building sector, which contributes 40% to CO2 emissions in Germany, so can be reduced by 40-50% just by using fuel cells using conventional natural gas. Yeah, so which is a strong contributor to the CO2 goals. Yeah, so if we have like a parallel stream, so in like producing clean hydrogen or natural gas, so that will add to that factor. So we have that in place. So we have now a new government, so they need to put together a new budget, and it's important that also like the budget is put behind such programs, and that this is also clear to everybody and the public, so that every consumer has the safety that they can use that program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can start with natural gas, and there's a longer term picture that it fits nicely into with fuel cells. We're just doing a roadmap for electrolysis for the German government. Also the main message being the technology is essentially ready, we can start deploying it. And it's always important to communicate about it. It's probably not so important to have only green hydrogen in the next few years. We may also use natural gas still for some time, but it all fits in a longer term perspective to be fully renewable at some point, be it directly hydrogen or making natural gas from hydrogen. This is a part of a bigger solution, and the technology is essentially ready now. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And of course, fuel cell technology includes electrolysis, PEM electrolysis, SO electrolysis, alkali electrolysis, all part of our development here. It's a huge factor in developing renewable resources. It actually limits the industry of renewable resources if you have no way to use the hydrogen on the one hand. The other hand, you have renewable resources that are not being harvested. We turn wind turbines off regularly in Germany because the grid is not a storage facility. Recently, our organization went to the United States. It was a solar cell exhibit, and the solar cell industry said, just a minute, you guys produce hydrogen with electricity, it can be stored and used later. They have a limit to their business model because they have no way to store. We're not talking about cars here, we're talking about gigawatts. Okay, so in essence, this is a question for your industry as well. You are actually inhibiting the development of renewable resources if you're not offering a technology that creates hydrogen and therefore energy storage facilities for renewable energies, and then that fuels literally and metaphorically the development of hydrogen applications. So where are we there? Do we have the policies?
Right now, it's probably still not so many hours a year that you can fully load your electrolyzer to make it a business case, but we are discussing about some early deployment phase where you can help that you can certify your renewable electricity and then produce green hydrogen from that. But I would go even one step further. There are big energy players globally that are looking where on the globe is a good overlap of PV and wind potential to dedicatedly deploy wind and PV and then produce hydrogen from that. Either ship the hydrogen or do something with the hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, liquid organic hydrogen carriers, whatever. But to replace in their longer term future fossil fuels with something that's produced from wind and solar. And that goes hand in hand with a stable grid that longer term will take the periods when you don't need the electricity directly and turn it into a fuel and something that you can store.
So I want to feed you another question instantly because you're the German specialist here. What he's talking about sounds vaguely like grid stabilization, but you know the home energy budget. You have your Gasetaschenheizer, that is, everyone has their own device for burning natural gas. When you break that down to kilowatt hours, 85% of the energy budget in a home is heating water and heating your apartment, and the rest is for your computer and your LED lights. Servicing the electrical grid is a small fraction of the energy budget when compared with transportation, industrial uses. Don't we need to get more ambitious to stop focusing simply on stabilizing the grid or using whatever the grid cannot absorb, and thinking rationally about how do we get the automotive sector, huge energy consumers, onto hydrogen? How do we shift the discourse there?
So yeah, so you are absolutely correct, and I can only support that. So like the plans and the strategies are certainly not missing. So what is certainly missing in many points is like actions behind it. So if we look here, yeah, so like the whole sector is seamlessly integrating, yeah, batteries and electrolyzers, fuel cells. So it's also like the strategy of the VDMA, and we had like in the last General Assembly like the strong point of electrolysis there. So you will find the information also in this brochure. So like the suppliers are behind that. Yeah. So what we need to do is to put actions behind it. So what we read in the agreements between the parties, yeah, for the next government. So we have all that. So long-term strategies are there, but we need to have actions. And so for my feeling, it cannot be ambitious enough. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I like the word actions. And so here's the question I'd like you to answer when you come back next year to tell us how things have gone. Do you all remember that suddenly you couldn't find an incandescent bulb? You know, someone changed the policy and all of a sudden everything's LEDs, you know, and they've gotten warm LEDs, it's a comfortable lighting, but there's LEDs there. It's a policy change. It's all about energy efficiency. No one has knocked on your door in your apartment and said, we're replacing your gas heater with a fuel cell unit. It's a policy decision. It's a policy decision that affects efficiencies because, in fact, that unit that is a fuel cell unit will pay for itself over its lifetime by 30% to 50% more efficiencies, depending on how it's used. So these are policy decisions. We need you also to address the guys on top here in the government, nationally and internationally. So are you willing to come back and tell us next year how things have changed, how policy is shaping up?
Of course, we are ready to do that.
Okay, wonderful. I've been talking to Dr. Manfred Stefener, who's chairman of VDMA, the working group for fuel cells, and Franz Lehner, who's managing consultant for eTech. The brochures are on the table, wonderful sources of information. These gentlemen will be here afterwards to address questions. So join them at the side of the forum. It's a pleasure talking to you, Stefan, once more.
Thank you very much.
And a pleasure to talk to you, Franz. And thank you very much. Up next, we'll be talking to Tobias König, who is from NOV, and they'll be talking about fuel cells for standalone power for critical infrastructure. Stay tuned. Back in a moment.